Hey, welcome on in. It is the lunch show with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. I'm Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne. Claibs, how we doing?
Everything's good, Joe. Everything's good. Off to a good week. A lot going on with regard to baseball. We've got football going on. The NHL is back. So this is a good week.
It is, yeah. A little bit of everything going on. I know NBA getting ready to get underway too, and I feel like the NHL kind of just snuck up on us.
It did.
Yesterday
Yeah.
was opening night, and you see it back on ESPN and now TNT, the new TV deals that the NHL has this year. So a lot of people probably flipping around trying to find some of those national games this week early on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I did not have a chance to see the games last night like I wanted to. So I'm going to lock in tonight and catch them on TNT.
Blues, of course, aren't going to be started until this weekend. They're having a little vacation before the season starts out in Colorado, but their season gets underway this weekend. We'll have a lot of Blues coverage here on Claibs Online. I know you just talked with Jeremy Rutherford earlier today. That'll be up on the website later. You'll also talk with Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN later this week, and then on Friday, I'll have an interview up on the website with Jim Thomas from the Post-Dispatch, who covers the Blues. So we'll have it all covered for you right here on Claibs Online, and interested to hear all three of their thoughts on what they expect out of this Blues team this year, because it's a far different team than the one that held up the cup at the end of 2019.
And probably rightfully so. That team had some real contributors, but I think it was time to move on from some situations. The question here is balanced scoring going to be enough? Jeremy Rutherford made a point. He doesn't predict anybody will score 30. He said there's a half a dozen guys that can score at least 20. And I wonder if that's going to be enough. I think it's got to be balanced. I think your defense has got to be more active offensively. Goaltending need to be better. But I think something, and we talked about it. Where's the physical presence going to be? You know, they don't have a guy who can go out and right or wrong. So that's something I'll be interested to see. Now, some teams feel like they don't need it. I think the Blues are one that does, especially the style that they're going to play. So we'll have to wait and see. I think the Jake Neighbors surprise, and that is a surprise that he's made this hockey team, but it's a 9-game tryout. And I think everybody has to understand that if they don't see enough of what they think and move forward, then he'll go back to juniors. And, I don't know, maybe that's a good thing, but maybe if he gets a taste of what's going to be required, he'll be better suited the next time he comes back.
Make sure to subscribe to us wherever you find your podcasts, whether that be on Spotify, iTunes, Google, wherever it is. And also be sure to check out our social media pages and our YouTube channel as well. Go and find Claibs Online there, and you can see all of the videos that we have from everything that we cover, because we here are trying to bring you as much coverage as we can. As you saw last week, Claibs and I both in Los Angeles for the wild card game, and Claibs, that was really the last time you and I had a chance to talk, was out there in LA, and see the way the Cardinal season came to an end. And I said it then on our post-game show, and I'll say it again, because now that I'm back, I got back from Chicago on Tuesday, and a lot of people are seeing them, talking to them now about the wild card game. I still am not disappointed with the way the Cardinal season ended on Wednesday. I felt like that was one of the best baseball games that I have been to and seen in person. And in the end, you saw a 106-win team advance in the playoffs, which they should have. And you saw a better team win, and you saw two managers really just throw it all out there on the line in that last game. And the Dodgers just got the best of the Cardinals in the end of it.
Yeah, somebody was going to lose. You make a good point about, the Dodgers. And it was a good game. I think the inability to score, but you had chances. It wasn't like Wainwright and Scherzer were throwing perfect games. They were vulnerable, but, neither team could push a run across. But it was a fun game. It didn't end the way Cardinal fans wanted it, but I think there was a lot to look forward to for next year. I think there'll be some subtle changes, at least there should be, to really make this lineup longer They've got some pitching questions to address, but I think overall they got enough to build on to certainly win a division, if not go beyond that. I think you're going to see a lot of change in a lot of teams this offseason because of the new CBA that we hope will get done in time. And I think free agency is going to be very interesting in certain positions. So it'll be wide open, I think.
Yeah, and that's, we have it's October 13th. We have a lot of time to get into everything that's going to happen in this Cardinal offseason. And we've seen the last few years, the hot stove is not what it used to be. You don't see the GM meetings produce all of these big trades and signings. You kind of see it trickle out slowly. And we've even seen it go into February with some of these before some of the big signings happen. But I think right now, if you're looking at what the Cardinals have in front of them in the offseason, it's more about what they're getting rid of right now.
Yeah.
And you find out yesterday, which came as no surprise to anybody, they are going to buy out the contracts of Matt Carpenter and Carlos Martinez, which frees up, what is it, $35 million, $36 million that's going to free up. And then you look at the fact that Andrew Miller's coming off the books. KK is coming off the books. Dexter Fowler is going to be coming off the books. Is this the most money that you've seen the Cardinals have to play with going into an offseason in the past, 20 years? I mean, in the DeWitt era?
It's a lot of money. And I also wonder how they're going to spend it. Are they going to spend it in acquiring players in trades? Or are they going to try and sign free agents? There's a lot of ways you can do it. I think we have to be careful, though, with the free agent route, because I think that hasn't gone as well for the Cardinals as maybe we would have liked for it to. When you think about a Fowler or a Brett Cecil or Andrew Miller, guys who just didn't live up to what you were hoping they could give you. So do you say to yourself, maybe there's 2 free agents out there we'd like to have or take a crack at? And I think it would be a guy like Seager and Kyle Schwarber, left-handed bats, which his lineup really needs. And then you say to yourself, well, maybe we ought to trade for some pitching. Maybe there's a team that's got a guy who's going in the last year of his deal, or maybe he's got a couple of years left, and maybe they want to go in another direction. So I don't know who that guy is right now, but I don't think you can afford to go in the next season with the current pitching status. I think you need a little bit more experience. I think you need guys that are more proven than on the other side of their careers. And you've got to have just a little bit more muscle in the bullpen, because I don't know how that's going to shake out, whether Gallegos is going to close. Is it Alex Reyes? Is it going to be Jordan Hicks? We just don't know. So we need to have a little insurance before the season starts.
And with the pitching too, it's easy to sit and look at what they need on offense. It's easy to look and say, okay, you know what? Something in the middle infield, whether you move Edman over to short and get a second baseman, or you get a shortstop to replace or improve on what DeYoung and Sosa could give you. And then you also think, okay, DH, you have that those answers are right there in front of you. Where the pitching, it's a little more tricky, because I think there are arms down in AAA, down in the minor leagues, that you're not sure where they are. Like a guy like Johan Oviedo, who the Cardinals did a good job of putting in Memphis this whole second half of the season and keeping him in Memphis and not having him face a major league team the entire second half of the year. How ready is he going to be next year? Because you've seen him up here in 20 and 21. So how much has he learned in July, August, September down there in Memphis? And will he be able to be a better pitcher and the pitcher they expect him to be up here at the big league level? How much can Jake Woodford improve on what we saw towards the end of the year? And then there is the health and longevity of some of the guys. Can Alex Reyes be stretched out? There are a lot of questions with who can start for this team, as opposed to, as you mentioned, just going out there and trading for a guy.
A lot of questions to be answered.
Yeah.
So, and that's the good thing about it. I mean, they're all questions that if you answer them, man, you could be a really good team. If you let it play itself out, you could still compete, but I think that really opens yourself up to a lot of other skepticism. So, overall, I the one thing about baseball, and you talked about it earlier, the free agent frenzy trickles out of the spigot in baseball compared to the NHL or the NBA and even the NFL. Man, when free agency starts, man, it is a fire sale. I mean, it's bells and blowing and whistles are blowing and bells are ringing. I mean, it's something that's a big deal. But we don't see it with baseball as much, and I don't know. They've always procrastinated. I think I'd rather have my team in place compared to trying to sit it out and just see if we can get guys for a little or nothing and try and squeeze the grape a little harder. I'm just not sure if that's always the best answer.
One name I didn't mention is Matthew Libator, as far as an arm for next year and kind of figuring out how ready he might be for the big leagues then. And whenever you talk Matthew Libator, you know he's going to be linked to Nolan Gorman. So as you threw the name out of there of Schwarber, AJ Przinsky yesterday on the broadcast kind of hinted at Adam Wainwright wanting Kyle Schwarber on the Cardinals for next year, which I don't think Adam Wainwright really he didn't deny. He definitely didn't say that, you know, I guess at this point, is it even tampering with an upcoming free agent that is still in the playoffs? But that's neither here nor there. Who would you rather have if you're looking at building that DH or putting that DH in place next year? Do you go to an outside lefty like Schwarber, or so you don't toy with the idea of bringing in someone or having Nolan Gorman be that guy?
Well, I guess here's the question: what's Nolan Gorman done? I mean,
he's shown the power at every level.
Yeah, but here's the thing: he's never done it at the big league level, and he's never been a DH. That's the other thing you have to take into account here. DHing, I think, is an acquired taste that everyone can't succeed in. And I don't think we've seen very many young players under the age of 25 that start their careers off as a DH. You know, unless you're some big slug that's in the American League, most of these guys work their way into that role. So I'm not even remotely interested in having Nolan Gorman start his career in the big leagues as a DH, because I don't think he's proven enough at that level, at the major league level, and at that position. I mean, it's one thing to move him from third to second. Now you're going to take the glove out of his hand and say, just worry about hitting. And I'm not sure if he's that adept of a hitter at this point in his career. So I want experience. I want a guy who's a pro. I want a guy who understands the game. I want a guy who's done it before. And I think Schwarber is probably the most likable and reasonable candidate.
Does that role of DH change, though, when you go from 15 everyday DHs to now 30 DHs? Is that role going to change throughout all of baseball, to where in the past it was perfect for a David Ortiz or a Frank Thomas or even recently a Nelson Cruz to be your everyday DH, because there were 15 of those jobs and the guys couldn't play the field anymore? But now that you expand that, it's going to be the entire Major League Baseball that has a DH. Is that a role that's going to change and maybe be moved around? I mean, you've seen the Cardinals do it for years, to where they would use series in American League ballparks to give guys a day off, but still keep them in the lineup.
Yeah, and I think that Schwarber answers a lot of those questions for you. I mean, he started off as a catcher. He's played in the outfield. He's played first base. So he's a more versatile guy that can give guys a spell. And, you know, maybe it's Arenado as a DH for a series. Maybe it's Goldschmidt. You know, you have plenty of options there that you would have. And I think I'd rather have a guy with his versatility than having a young guy who, like I said, has never done it at this level. He's never stepped foot in a major league batter's box yet. So I think Schwarber checks that major box that they're looking for, a left-handed legitimate bat.
As St. Louis's self-proclaimed biggest fan of the DH, Claibs, I'm very happy that I will never have to watch a Cardinal game again where the pitcher hits.
I agree with you. I agree.
It's been a long time coming, and whatever sacrifices they need to give up in the CBA to get the DH to be universal, I am all on board with that. So how do you go about when the Cardinals season ends and you are there watching all 162 games every single season? When the season ends for the team, short of the playoffs or short of, you know, the NLCS or whatever, how do you go about watching the rest of the playoffs? How invested have you been this year?
You know, I've watched probably more than I normally would, because I still think it's still up in the air who's the best team. We faced the Dodgers, as you mentioned. San Francisco is a team I'm trying to figure out how they won as much because when the Cardinals faced them, the Cardinals were reasonably successful against them. And then the team I thought was the best team in the American League in Tampa gets knocked off by a team I thought barely got in Boston. And then there's Houston. I think they're the most intriguing team that's still out there. They got a hell of a manager. They got a really good lineup. They have enough pitching, and they can make it very interesting in what's going on. With what they can do. So I'm anxious to see those teams. So I'll watch a little longer, and I've enjoyed the broadcast. I think Adam Wainwright's done a nice job. He and AJ Przinsky really have found a good chemistry in a brief period of time. There's some other guys I enjoy their work. I love Brian Anderson. I love his work. I mean, he's a good friend. So there are a lot of reasons for me to watch. But I will say this: now that hockey is now another option, I'll have to be very thoughtful about what I'm going to watch and for how long.
Now that when Mike Shannon retires from the booth, you guys have an opening there at the up there.
No, we don't.
Why not bring Wainwright up there for a game or two when it's his off days?
No, we're good. I think Adam Wainwright's future is the network route. Frank Cusimano and I were talking about this the other day. Why does Adam Wainwright want to go to Pittsburgh and Cincinnati? 3 or 4 times a season as a broadcaster. He's a guy that I think certainly fits in with a network. And I think when you have young kids, you want to spend as much time around them as you can. This is not a money grab for Adam Wainwright. He's made a very good career salary-wise. So I think he wants to have fun with it, and I think that's his real calling. Now,
I was just talking about next year. I was just talking about in the booth next year. Like, he pitches on a Monday. You guys bring him up in the booth and do the game with you on Tuesday or Wednesday.
No, we're good. I mean, I love Adam Wainwright, but I just think that takes away from what he offers when he's not pitching.
Yeah.
There's somebody in that dugout he can help.
Yeah, it's been so, and I said this to Rammer the other day about how good he's been, is that too many times, and you see it in all sports, you'll get an athlete who didn't want anything to do with the media during his playing days.
Yeah.
And then he retires and he goes, "Oh, I can make some money doing this. Well, I want to go do that now." But Adam Wainwright's been the exact opposite. Adam Wainwright has been very kind to the media during his entire career. And it's nice to see him doing a really good job of it up in the TV booths in the postseason.
That's an excellent point you make. And I think it also lends to the fact that we all root for him to do well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there's some guys you kind of give the eye roll to because he's on TV now when he was a jerk as a player. But now with Adam, I think everybody who knows him, like you mentioned, they openly root for him to do well, and they appreciate his candor.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned that he was calling the Astros and White Sox series. I don't know if he's doing any more in the postseason, or if he's done for now, or what his future is. But you saw another chapter of Tony Larussa versus Dusty Baker, and we were told ahead of time that they had ironed everything out and they were cordial. It doesn't seem like that after the series we just saw.
Well, I think when you play ball, that's a different story. I mean, it's not like if they saw each other in a bar, they wouldn't tip a glass or anything. But when they're playing, they're both cut out of the same piece of leather, man. I mean, it's about winning. And I found that series to be interesting with all the back channel chatter about accusations. And it's typical Tony in trying to get somebody off their game. Dusty didn't take the bait, nor did his team. Which I found amusing because they've been through a lot. Okay, not necessarily on Dusty's watch, but just the whole stigma that the Astros carry is something that they're not going to be able to shake. And I don't care who's wearing the uniform. But overall, I thought it was a good series. Houston's, as I said, you better watch out, man. They don't have many holes, and they've got some decisions to make about their future after this year, as far as Correa is concerned. They've got some other players, and the fact that. Do they want to bring Dusty back? Obviously, they should. This guy's a Hall of Fame manager, and there aren't many of those guys walking the street right now.
The name that keeps coming up for Cardinals as far as the shortstop hole is Corey Seager from the Dodgers. But as you just mentioned, Carlos Correa is another shortstop that's going to be out there in free agency. How hard do the Cardinals kick the tires on that? Because they have the money.
Yeah, I think that you kick the tire more on Seager because he's a left-handed bat. I think that's the one thing that gives him more of an interest from the Cardinals compared to Correa, who's a dynamic player. I kind of get the feeling that Houston's going to try and keep him. I mean, he's been their guy from day one. So I think Seager is probably more attractive to the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that as well. Where is Seager from? Where is
New York?
He is.
Where
He's
his
in New
dad
York?
is from. His family, Ricky Horton, played against his dad in high school. Ricky knows
Okay.
his family extremely well. So I want to say he's from New York, but I could be wrong on that. But I'm going to say New York, upstate New York.
Okay, I thought he was Midwest guy, but yeah. So that's Seager family though too, because Kyle Seager's a free agent as well. So that
That's
Seager
true.
family is going to be making a lot of money.
Yeah.
This offseason.
There's going to be a few guys, and here's the one caveat to Seager. And you mentioned where from the Midwest. He just built a home in Nashville.
Oh, okay, that's it. Okay, that's what I was thinking of.
At last check, Nashville's fairly close to St. Louis for those people who like to use the whole family connection and the convenience. So if there's one little tidbit of advantage, maybe it's that. I don't know.
Yeah, so there you go. We'll get into all the postseason stuff and all of the or all the offseason stuff as we go on here for several months now for Cardinal baseball. But hey, all postseason talk brought to you by the Alton Sports Tap. Up for you can vote right now. Go to altonsportstap.com and help vote them the best wings in all of Madison County, which they've won 9 years in a row. Best sports bar, best outdoor patio, and the best appetizers in all of Madison County over there on the Illinois side. Claibs will be out there this month out there for one of our lunch shows, and we'll invite the folks out there to come with us as well. I've had the wings. They are delicious. I have not had the Nashville hot chicken sandwich that they have out there at Alton Sports Tap. So that'll be something we'll have to try when we are doing the show out there here either next week or next Monday. I know the next 2 weeks will be in Alton. It's either going to be at Munganess Alton Toyota or at Alton Sports Tap, the sponsor of our postseason coverage. We are going to get into a lot of football talk here in just a bit. You are watching Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura, and sponsored by the Home Loan Expert, Ryan Kelly. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com.
It's hard work to be at the top of your game, always improving, to be better, but it's worth it. At Ameren, Illinois, we approach reliability the same way. It's why we don't just power one of the smartest energy grids in the nation. We work tirelessly to make it smarter, with upgrades, improvements, and a plan for the future. And we'll never stop raising the bar on reliability, because it matters to you. Learn more at amerenillinois.com/reliability.
Back here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura, and sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the Home Loan Expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. Claibs, before we get into all of the football talk and the Jon Gruden stuff, just quickly got to throw up the scores, the standings right now, as you see that I am still in first place. Still there.
Enjoy
in first place.
Enjoy it while you can.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
We only put 4 games on the docket last week. The Arkansas Ole Miss game, Penn State, Iowa, Broncos, Steelers, and Bills, Chiefs. And Claibs, it was you only went 1-3 this past week. I'm surprised you went Penn State in there being on the road in Iowa for that game.
Yeah, Iowa is one of those programs that I don't take as serious as others do, because they always hoot and holler about how good they are, but you can't find them when the big games are on the line. But I thought Penn State was good enough to go in there, obviously, and beat them, because they've had a pretty good schedule and it's well coached, and they don't beat themselves very often. But you know what? Those things happen. The Ole Miss Arkansas game, that was maybe as good of a game as we had over the weekend. But I still think Arkansas is the better team, although defensively, for all those people who thought Barry Odom was this defensive guru, his defenses are getting shredded almost every week, and we can go back to last year as well. So I think I've got to put a little bit more stock in Arkansas when it comes to saying we're just going to have to outscore the other guy. We're not going to be able to stop many people.
Yeah, the Arkansas defense, the Mizzou defense. I know you're going to talk with Howard Richards this week, but that Mizzou defense now has to go up against Texas A&M this week, who's going to be riding the highest of highs after their win over Alabama this past Saturday. It's not good what they're putting out there on the other side of the ball in Columbia. I don't know words to describe it.
You know what? There's no relief in sight because they got A&M, they got Georgia, they got some really tough games down the stretch. But I think, allowing their most recent opponent to put that much on them just says they got big problems. And I don't know how you fix it in season. You can bring in any coach at this point. I just don't know if there's somebody who can turn things around other than going out and getting better players. And that's the first and foremost thing they have to do.
Right. The guys, you're not finding kids walking around campus that you can just throw in there to the middle of that defense. This isn't Remember the Titans where you're taking guys from the offense and throwing them over on the defense.
Listen, there was a time when that used to take place. I know when I was in high school, it was nothing to see guys go both ways. I know still some players that do it, but I think the urgency that Missouri has now, there's no quick fix to this problem.
No, there isn't. You and Howard Richards will touch on that as you guys do Huddle Up with Howard this week here on Claibs Online. We got to talk. The biggest story isn't what happened on the field this week in the NFL in Week 5. It's everything that's off the field. And I think if you went into Sunday's games asking what coach was on the hot seat and which coach was likely to be coaching their last game, Jon Gruden wasn't going to be the answer at that moment. Urban Meyer was very easily in the lead there, but then the emails come out and Jon Gruden has resigned as the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. From the beginning, before that game was even played, you saw the emails about DeMaurice Smith. Your thoughts on just everything that you saw released about Jon Gruden this week?
Well, obviously somebody had it in for him. Okay. And they gave the Raiders a chance. The league gave the Raiders a chance to do something in-house about Gruden, and they didn't. Hence, more emails came out. I've never been a Jon Gruden fan. There's too many things that I've heard about him and people who have been around him and people who played for him that just tell me he's not the person that everybody thought he was. Fraud would be one thing. He won a Super Bowl with Tony Dungy's players. And when he had to go out and coach his own players, you saw how that ended. He's been a disappointment with the Raiders as far as their productivity is concerned. Now I know he's quick with his quotes and his statements from time to time, but it didn't get things done. And for him to say what he said, and he blanketed the earth. He didn't miss anybody. Minorities, gay people, management, ownerships, the league commissioner. The guy had to go. And my question is, what about the people who saw the email? What about the people he shared it with? And Bruce Allen is the same guy in Jon Gruden, a bad person. So how far does this go? They're talking about 650,000 emails that they're going through. It may take a while, but if you think Jon Gruden's the only person that's saying this or doing it, you're sadly mistaken. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that kind of opens up a lot of questions into what's happening here in St. Louis right now with the lawsuit between the NFL and the Rams leaving the way they did. And now as more and more of the trial keeps moving forward and we're getting into that exploring process of it and wanting these owners to hand over all of their information, we're talking about opening up more of these cans of worms that you're seeing in the NFL, which I think is very telling as to why the NFL tried to settle with Colin Kaepernick for as much as they did, because they didn't want people going through their stuff. And now you're seeing the NFL Players Association wanting all of these emails to be released to see what else is being said and who else, what other type of characters there are within the NFL, and the ownerships and the NFL isn't about to do that at all, which I think is, I think the settlement here in St. Louis is only going to keep going higher and higher, which is going to be a really fascinating thing to see how much blood St. Louis is out for in this, or how much all of this is worth to them to just end it.
Well, I think they're going to end it. Here's something that we fail to talk about. Stan Kroenke's on the hook for this whole thing. Okay. Now the owners, he indemnified them early in the game. So whatever check comes out is going to come from him, perhaps through the NFL, but Stan's on the hook for this. I know that there's this rumor, and I think it's an unfounded one, about, well, St. Louis can get a team. Well, first of all, you have to have an owner. Secondly, you have to have a stadium. Thirdly, you have to have another team because you can't have a league with 33 teams. Fourthly, you have to have a whole different mindset about how you're going to work with the NFL. We don't have any of that. So, and if it's going to be $1 billion, there's not a team in this league that's worth $1 billion. They're all worth more. Mm-hmm. So, write the check and move on, because we're not going to get a team. Personally speaking, I don't want one. I just think I've had enough of how the NFL does business. And I think once these emails are disclosed, we're going to have an even more salty taste in our mouth about what's going on. So, it's a lot of conversation, but I think when it's all said and done, I think they'll sign off and just do a deal and move on.
See, I'm on the other side of that. I don't know where you're speaking from as far as not wanting the team. I know I wasn't around when the Cardinals left. I was, I came in and I started working in the middle of the Rams being bad. So that's all I remember as far as covering an NFL team, is covering a really, really bad NFL team. I would love to have an NFL team to cover in my town. I would love an NBA team, but that's a different conversation. But I would not mind if it ended up resulting in getting an NFL team, because I don't think the problem is that 34th team. If St. Louis ends up being
where would it be?
I think there are a number of cities that the NFL wants to go to.
Give me one.
London.
Okay. So let's stop
right off the top. You asked me to name one right off the top of my head.
Yeah, but here's the thing. London doesn't work because you have to have more teams over there. So you're going to say London is going to have a team where you're going to have to make a flight. It destroys your whole practice regimen. It also puts you in a position where if you had another team or maybe two over there, maybe you could do that. But I don't see that happening in the foreseeable future. Because again, in the St. Louis thing, I'm just going to say it again. You don't have an owner. We don't have people with that sort of money to be an owner. You don't have a stadium. And please don't tell me you're going to try and use this dump downtown. I mean, it was outdated when they built it. So I just think there's just too many things that work against you. And the reason why I say I don't want one is because there are too many things, too many boxes that have to be checked. And we're in the basement on all of those issues. So if you're talking about a team, and do we want another guy who's not from here to come in and buy a team or bring a team here only so he can move it to his own town? I mean, there's just too many things that create too much angst for us to even want to entertain that.
Your friend Isaac Bruce has made it clear that he would be he'd be willing to be a part of ownership. I know he doesn't have the $5 billion to own an entire team, but he has made it known that he'd love to be involved.
I love Isaac Bruce. I think he's one of my favorite athletes of all time. But we're talking about serious money, okay? We're talking about a guy who's got to have at least 3-4 billion, period, in his own name. And remember, this is a league that deals with cash. This isn't about owning this. If you don't have cash, you have no shot. And we don't have that person in St. Louis. We don't have him.
No, I mean, the name that jumps to the top is the Taylor family, but I don't know what that net worth is.
They could afford it, but why do it? I mean, they're already involved in hockey and in the soccer team. So you got to have somebody else come to the rescue.
Right.
And that person isn't here.
Right. And last time when that happened and you thought you had a guy with St. Louis ties that came in because he was from Columbia, Missouri, you saw what happened 20 years later. He took him out to LA. So
here's the other question. You need a stadium. You're going to build it. There's not a community. There's not a government in this state that's going to rear their head up and go build it. It's got that kind of money. We've seen what happened the first time we did that. So that's your other issue, building a stadium. So again, it sounds noble to do it. I'm a realist. I don't care. I don't want it because we're not even close to being ready to move forward. Take the money and move on.
What's that number though for you?
Well, see, here's the other thing that comes with that. We keep pumping that number up, okay? We think $1 billion is a good starting point. Who's getting that money? Are you getting any of it? Am I getting some of it? You know, I mean, so we don't even know how that's going to be divvied up. And who and how it's going to be divvied up and who it goes to and who makes those decisions. There's so many things that come into this that just don't have clear-cut answers. Yeah, you know, hey, $1 billion. Okay, make it $1 billion. We'll take $1 billion. And we'll piss that away.
I think it's got to be a lot higher than that. If this, for as long as this is already gone, and how much longer it could possibly go, I think a billion. I don't even know if that's a starting point, especially when you're with what you're talking about with the people involved that you're talking about. I think 5 billion needs to be a starting point for something like that. If you want to come out of this thinking you won, it needs to be at least 5 billion, probably 10 billion. But again, I don't know where that money's going. I don't know where that money goes. You're never going to see that.
You know, they've already thrown it up there. And if it goes to a jury, they could give you some insane number. But as it was once explained to me, by the time this thing could be resolved, all the people who are in the business of following it and covering it, their kids won't even see the money. Yeah. So, you know, I see where everybody feels anxious about it, but I think there's a long way to go. The easiest thing is to settle out of court. And I think that's where it's going to come. But how and when they do it, it was still up in the air. I guess they're going to have to do something before January. Whether, you know what, they could still have ongoing discussions during the trial, okay, if it gets to that. So I just think we just have to wait it out.
Well, this is all stuff that's going on off the field. On the field, this week 5 has come and gone. Claibs, I did not watch much football this past Sunday. I was doing the Chicago Marathon, so that was football was the last thing on my mind this past weekend. But I did see my guy Josh Allen have one hell of a game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And as I sit here and I look at the standings throughout the entire NFL, you have one undefeated team in the Arizona Cardinals, and you have a handful of teams with just one loss. You have Dallas, Tampa, Green Bay, the Los Angeles Rams, the Los Angeles Raiders, Baltimore, and Buffalo. Your power rankings, who is the best team in the NFL right now?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I would say,
think, even though the Cardinals are undefeated, I don't think you're putting them at number one.
Yeah, I think Buffalo, because they've beaten some good teams along the way. They've been very impressive. Defensively, they're really good. I think right now, as we speak, I think Buffalo's the number one team. And now for me, this is when I really pay attention to the games, because we now have guys that are in football shape. We now have teams that are having to adjust because of injury. You don't think the Chiefs are in bad shape? You know, they lose their number one runner. This is when we're going to start to see teams really come together, and then you're going to start to see some teams ready to raise the white flag because their season's over.
You know, just trying to figure out who the best team is. You know, we both have just mentioned Josh Allen. Who's the best quarterback right now in the NFL? Is it Josh Allen?
I don't know.
Lamar Jackson?
I think it's between Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Tom Brady.
So at what point do we
start
giving...
Here's the other thing. Nobody's talking about Jameis Winston, but he's putting up some pretty lofty numbers also. And New Orleans is a team that has multiple options passing-wise that can beat you. So he might have to be in that conversation also.
So as we talk about that, you just mentioned 4 quarterbacks. We just talked about a lot of teams that aren't the Arizona Cardinals. At what point do they start getting any kind of respect for being 5-0 and for Kyler Murray being a young, up-and-coming quarterback?
Well, first of all, I think the whole respect thing is more media contrived than anything else. And, you know, there's some guys that are going to walk around with a chip on their shoulders because nobody's giving them love. You know what? At this time of year, who cares? I mean, you want to be the best team when the playoffs start. But with that said, I think the fact that the way as breakneck as Arizona is offensively, and Murray does a lot of business with his legs, you keep thinking, man, his size is going to catch up to him and he's going to get hurt. And I think that's the same thing they used to say about Lamar Jackson until somebody tried to tackle him and realized Lamar Jackson was bigger than some of the guys that was tackling him. So when you have all that working for you, I think that's one of the reasons why Arizona probably doesn't get as much love at this point. But certainly if you watch them play, and I've had a chance to watch a couple of their games, they're not bad, man. They're pretty good on defense. And we know about their passing game. He's throwing to some really good receivers. And their running game is really starting to come around. This is a team that doesn't have many holes.
Yeah, it's and hey, at some point, Claibs, when you start paying attention to the games, maybe you'll start getting some of these picks right.
Yeah,
too.
I want you to have a good time with this.
Climbing out of that.
I want you to have a good time with it because when I take over, like I was just telling you, nobody really cares about the standings right now. You want to have you want to pay attention to the end of the year when it's all said and done. I'll have the trophy.
All right, we'll keep those scores up there. This week's games will be coming up on this week's edition of Weekend Joe with the results next Monday here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe. We take our final break. When we come back, wrap it up with some NBA talk and whatever else we have on our mind here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura, and sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com.
The 2021 Acura TLX is the top-selling luxury sedan in St. Louis, and St. Louis Acura has an unbeatable selection. The TLX has the highest safety rating, and right now you can get $2,500 in Loyalty Conquest offers with 0% financing for up to 36 months. We offer free pickup and delivery, and we'll also buy your used vehicle, even if you don't buy from us. St. Louis Acura, committed to becoming better than ever for you.
Back here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe. Claibs, we talked a little bit at the beginning of the show about the Blues and the start of their season. What is your level of surprise, and maybe this is something you cover with Jeremy Rutherford, of Vladimir Tarasenko being on this Blues roster to start the season?
I'm not surprised. Vladimir Tarasenko created his own value. He has none. I know the Blues weren't going to give him away. But, I think the way Tarasenko handled things really decreased his value. That doesn't mean that, somebody, if he plays well, they might move him. But I think right now he is what it is. And until he is shown that he can play and stay healthy, I think they're stuck with him. Because you're not going to give away a player like that. I don't care. He makes $7.5 million, and that's the one detractor to this whole thing. And I know the Blues would probably like to move him to free up some money to be able to do some other things, but you can't give away a guy like that because what happens if he does score 30? We don't know what kind of player he is anymore, but I just don't think giving him away helps anybody. Well, it looks like we're having a little bit of okay, here we go.
Yeah, I was going to say my internet went down as we went there, but there we go. We flipped it back, and now we're reconnected on that. I don't know where we left off or what.
Well, we talked about Tarasenko, and he doesn't have any value. You can't give him away. I mean, his salary is a lot, but you can't give guys away. And if he just focuses on playing and maybe he's productive, maybe things change. Who knows?
And the reason I bring Tarasenko up is the situation going on in Philadelphia right now in the NBA with Ben Simmons just kind of showing up to the team facility while they're playing a preseason game, and Elton Brand having to get a text saying, "Hey, Ben's outside the building trying to get in." That is one of the most bizarre situations that we have seen play out over the offseason, with just the way last season ended and the way that they're continuing on into this year, with Ben Simmons just showing up and nobody having any clue. Well,
it's been poorly handled by Ben Simmons' agent, Rich Paul. this is an era where guys think they can get traded just because they want to get traded. But you have to have another dance partner. And I commend Philadelphia for not giving Ben Simmons away just because he wanted to take his ball and go play somewhere else. And here's the other reason. Ben Simmons is a guy who gets half his salary at the beginning of the year. All right. But he has to play in order to get it. So, all of a sudden you're thinking about the money that he was missing out on. So there's another reason why he decided to show up.
Yeah. And that's kind of the case right now in Brooklyn, too. Kyrie Irving, who will not get the vaccine and was told, look, you're not playing. You're not going to play any home games if you don't get the vaccine. And then the Nets just came out instead and said, you know what? He's not going to play at all until he decides to get the vaccine. So
Fine.
he's missing
I got no
out,
problem with that.
Yeah, on $17 million. That Kyrie Irving has had kind of a history of quotes and conspiracies, and I don't know how else to describe some of the things that Kyrie Irving believes in his head. But he is against getting the vaccine, and he thinks he is. I guess he thinks he is standing up, and he is the Colin Kaepernick or Martin Luther King kind of avoiding taking this vaccine. No,
he's an idiot. Okay. And to even put him in that category of two outstanding people in our society, I got no time for him. Okay. If he wasn't such a good player, we wouldn't even be talking about him. They would have just cut him or just say, you can go home. We don't need you. And it may come to that. You don't think that New Jersey isn't trying to make a deal to get him out of there because it's a distraction.
Yeah.
And while his teammates have tried to side with him and support him, at some point, hey, look, man, we're here to play. We're trying to win. And we don't need this. So I just think at some point enough is enough. And if he doesn't want to do it, then you don't get paid. Plain and simple.
Yeah. To say that he's not, and it's the fact that he isn't anti-vax, as we've seen some of these athletes do, he just is refusing to get it. It's very bizarre the way that he is kind of handling that. You saw a few NBA players come out beforehand and say, I thought they weren't getting it. And then the NBA or states came out and said, you're not playing in home games. You're not playing here if you don't get it. Next day they were sitting
you don't
in a
get
chair.
paid. Yeah. So we'll see how far this goes. I just think Kyrie, I'm worn out by him.
Yeah, it's there was a time where it was entertaining when he tried to explain why he thought the earth was flat. That was, that's entertaining. Now it's just to a point where it's more of an annoyance.
Yeah, exactly.
I think more than anything. We already mentioned you had Jeremy Rutherford on earlier. That'll be up on the website. And you're doing Howard Richards tomorrow. Anything else in the works?
We're going to do Everett Fitzhugh next week, the first African-American voice in the National Hockey League. We were going to do him this week, but he contracted COVID.
I saw that. Yeah, he had to miss the Kraken's season opener.
Missed the opener. So we're going to visit with him next week. We're going to have a pretty good show tomorrow with Howard Richards. He was working on a really special guest, and I haven't talked to him today. As you mentioned, Alex Ferrario. So we'll have a few things working going into the weekend and certainly in the next week. And we'll still have some baseball here as well. So stay tuned is what I can suggest.
Awesome. Sounds good. He is Mike Claiborne. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been another edition of Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. If you're watching us, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page or follow us on Twitter or Facebook and Instagram as well. And if you are watching the replay, maybe you missed some of it, it'll be up in the podcast forum later, up on Spotify, iTunes, and Google. Lots of places where you can follow along, listen, and watch all of the content that we bring you here on claibsonline.com. But as for the lunch show, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura, and sponsored by this man, Ryan Kelly, at the homeloanexpert.com. We wish you a good rest of the week. We'll talk to you on Monday.
The only thing faster than this supersonic golf cart are the closing times at thehomeloanexpert.com. Mortgage rates are in the twos, and we have a 21-day closing guarantee. Apply online today at thehomeloanexpert.com.